Hello, everyone. I'd like to officially welcome you to today's webinar, Applying for Federal Jobs Using Non-Competitive Eligibility, or NCE. I'm Calvin Landrum, a training coordinator with the Corporation for National and Community Service, and I'll be the host for today's webinar. I'll also be facilitating the live Q&A at the end of the session. Also joining us are Jess and Indy from our partners at Education Northwest, who have helped to prepare today's webinar and will be managing the WebEx technology. You'll also see them in the chat and Q&A to help address questions you may have during the session. I'd like to welcome our main speakers. Today we have with us Liz Matthews, VISTA Outreach and Recruitment Team Leader. Liz has been with CNCS for almost 7 years and served as a VISTA in Lake Charles, Louisiana in the mid-90s. Tawana Chase works in the Office of Human Capital as a Human Capital Specialist with a concentration on staffing, placement, and classification. Tawana has worked in the federal government in a variety of human resource positions and agencies for the last 12 years. And Cindy Gallion works with AmeriCorps State and National as an Assistant Program Officer. Her role supports the whole unit with data analysis and management, outreach, and administration. Cindy served as a VISTA for 1 year in Washington State, as well as a VISTA leader for 3 years in North Dakota. During today's session, we're going to define non-competitive eligibility, talk about the process for searching and applying for positions, provide some tips for creating federal resumes, and talk about how you can highlight your VISTA service in your application. So let's get started. So what is non-competitive eligibility? Non-competitive eligibility gives VISTAs and return Peace Corps volunteers a leg up when applying for positions in the federal government. Your VISTA service permits you to compete in a smaller pool of applicants, potentially improving your chances of success. To start us off, we'd like to see what some of you might already know about NCE status. Please answer using the poll to the right side of your screen. The first question, when does your non-competitive eligibility status start? Second question, how long do you have non-competitive eligibility status? And third question, does your non-competitive eligibility status guarantee you a job? We'll take a second and let those answers roll in. Hopefully we'll get to know a little bit about you guys just through this question. Maybe we can tailor this presentation to kind of work towards your knowledge base a little bit. I was reading the chat before this and saw that a lot of people have lots of interest in working in Park Service. Some people said that they want a computer job that they don't have to sit down for a lot. I saw the solution to that was get a stand-up desk. Excellent solution. Excellent solution. All right, it looks like our poll has ended. We're going to wait for this to calculate some of our answers. Maybe. We'll get some of those answers soon, I think. Someone said they'd love to be a VISTA training coordinator. That's me. Oh, it's a good job. It's
a dream job.
Yeah, I get to do this all day. It's really great. I love that. All right, so what do we see? As soon as you complete service is our most common answer for the first question. Question 2, you have NCE status for a year. That is correct. It's 1 year after you complete your service. And does NCE status guarantee a federal job? No, also a correct answer. So while I'm looking at this, so Liz, would you please take this away and walk us through the answers?
Absolutely. Thank you, Calvin, and thanks everyone for participating on today's call. Your answers are very impressive, so I think you all know a bit about NCE, which is great, and we're going to dive even deeper. So you're in the right spot, and as Calvin said through your chat, you're already asking and sharing really great information, so thank you for that. So, non-competitive eligibility, or NCE, is a federal hiring appointment that is granted to VISTA members for 1 year upon successful completion of your VISTA service. So having current NCE eligibility status does not mean that a former VISTA is entitled to federal employment or guaranteed a job. However, NCE permits a federal hiring agency or a federal agency to hire a VISTA in a much more simple way. So, for example, if a federal hiring manager met you at a networking event and they were very impressed with your skills and your experience, you could, in theory, give them your resume and they could hire you without looking at any other resumes, as long as you meet the minimum requirements, the minimum qualifications, and they meet their agency's pre-employment requirements. So this is what we like to call the AmeriCorps Vista Advantage. And of all the national service programs, only Vistas receive this special hiring appointment. You should also note that returned Peace Corps volunteers also receive this benefit. So of the AmeriCorps family programs, it's only Vista, and it's also Peace Corps that has this NCE eligibility status benefit. So moving on, while NCE lasts for 12 months, there are 3 reasons for it to be extended. So you can see those up on the screen. The first of those 3 reasons are if you decide to go into the military. The second is if you become a full-time student at a recognized institution of higher learning. And the third is if you engage in another activity that the hiring agency thinks warrants an extension. That tends to be the grayest of the 3 areas. So let me just say that an example of another activity could be interning at a nonprofit. You could really just be volunteering somewhere, or you could have actual employment at an organization that is providing you with skills and experience that make you an even stronger job candidate, and the hiring manager can warrant seeing that that experience should give you an extension. So let's take a look at some common questions that come up that you may be thinking. So you're serving for 2 years. Does that mean you get 2 years of eligibility? No, sorry. No matter how long you serve, you only get 1 year of eligibility. Another common question, I've served several part-time VISTA terms, and I think we actually mean summer associate because there are no part-time VISTA terms. So let's say you've done 2 summer associate VISTA terms that add up to almost a full year, or 3 terms. Can you get NCE? Again, the answer is no. You need to serve a full-time, year-long VISTA assignment to receive NCE status. And you can't exit under compelling circumstances for a compelling reason and still get your NCE. You have to have served for the full year. So the benefits of NCE are hopefully pretty clear. It really does give you a significant advantage, and it allows you to compete for positions that are not always available to the general public. They don't have to be posted on USA Jobs. They may be, but they don't have to be. It's a faster hiring process. So once meeting their agency's pre-employment requirements, managers can make an offer to a candidate that meets the minimum qualifications, and that can happen pretty quickly. As you can imagine, this is really desired by hiring managers, and it's such a pretty simple process that many federal hiring managers don't realize that it's there. They don't know how to take advantage of it. They don't know how to bring new employees on in this way. So we are doing what we can on our end to educate hiring managers at different federal agencies about how AmeriCorps Vista members make great job candidates and also have NCE. For example, we just did a presentation at NASA. They happen to be our new neighbors here at CNCS headquarters. Yeah, so that was really exciting. Go Space. And they were really appreciative of our presentation, and it was in front of 12 different of their locations across the country. And we've done these types of presentations at dozens of federal agencies trying to spread this message. All right, so let's take a look at steps for applying your NCE. The first, and I would say most important thing in any job search regardless of whether it's federal employment, is networking. And that is something you really should constantly be doing. It's never too early to start. So I would encourage you to go to career fairs, use Meetup. See if there's anything happening in your community that's of interest to you, that's putting you with people that would be helpful for your career. Stalk LinkedIn, look at your network, see where people are currently working, see where they used to work, and see if there's any links there and you can utilize their network. And then I'd also say ask people for informational interviews. This can really be a great way to get into an agency. You know, people love to talk about themselves, so most of the time, Calvin does.
I do. I love talking about myself.
So they most likely will say yes, and people want to help others. You know, that's part of what it's all about. So don't be shy and ask for informational interviews. The second step is to search for NCE positions on USA Jobs. Or just searching for positions in general on USA Jobs. Familiarize yourself with the site and what types of jobs are available, what's even out there. And that way you can start to narrow down your interests either by job type or agency. And we're going to hear in a little while about Cindy's approach to that. And then create a federal resume. So Tawana is actually going to walk you through how to get started on that process of creating a federal resume, and we'll even see an excerpt from Cindy's federal resume that she used, and she was hired here at CNCF using her NCE. Fourth, write a cover letter, and this really is only if requested, so don't submit a cover letter if they don't ask for it. They'll just throw it away. And reference your NCE status. So don't assume that hiring managers know about this, and don't assume they know that AmeriCorps Vista members have it. So you may have to do some educating on your part. And then finally, submit an application and include your close of service date and or your verification of service letter. So just a note there, we realize that many of you may be applying before you're actually done with your service. So you would just indicate when you're finished with your service and when the date that your NCE would start, which is the day after your close of service. So if you're applying while you're still serving, you can use that approach. Otherwise, you can submit your verification of service letter, and we will show you what that looks like and how to get it towards the end of this presentation. I mean, in the next slide. Here we go. So this is what your letter should look like. This is our new letterhead. So the letter on the portal right now doesn't have that. It's really important for you to make sure you have the right letter. So once you've successfully completed your service term, you can obtain this verification of service letter. So what you would do in order to get that, you can either call the National Service Hotline and opt to connect to the VMSU, that's the Vista Member Support Unit. You all most likely have already interacted with them. Or you can email them directly at vmsu@cns.gov and tell them you would like your verification of service letter. And it's helpful for them to have if you have a common name, it's helpful for them to have your NSP ID number for them to look you up. So you cannot get this letter until after you have completed your service term. So keep this handy for when you reach that point if you're not there already. All right, so let's take a look at some federal agencies and some sample job categories. So agencies you've heard of, the Department of Education, you've heard of many of these. I would also encourage you to look at USA Jobs and research smaller agencies, because there can be some very interesting work done at agencies that not everybody has heard of, and the competition may not be as stiff as some of the other more bigger brand names, if you will. And some of the sample job categories you can see up there. So there's lots of different ways to enter the job market, and hopefully you have been doing something in your VISTA term of service that falls into one of these categories that will help you translate your skills and experience into federal employment. So here's a look at some current job listings. You can read those. And you can see there's really quite a wide variety of positions and locations. So now Tawana is going to guide us through both searching and applying on usajobs.gov. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Tawana.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tawana Chase, and like Calvin and Liz stated earlier, I work in the Office of Human Capital here at CNCS, and I, along with 2 other human capital specialists, staff the civilian and federal positions here at the corporation. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of qualifying for a position, I'm just going to walk you through selecting the correct options in USA Jobs to pull up non-comp positions that you'd be eligible to apply to. So I'm just going to take over the screen. Give us a short second. I'm new to this content. Okay. Thank you. All right, I hope everybody can see the front screen of USA Jobs. When you apply to positions, you're just going to go into www.usajobs.gov, and how you want to pull up positions that would be eligible to you and you would be able to use your non-comp eligibility. You want to first go into advanced right here. And this is going to be basically your search screen. So you have to tell it basically what you want it to do. So first we're going to look at a couple of things that you can either search by. So you can search by salary. So if you want to be making $100,000, you can pull that up and search that way. You can search by occupational series or category. If there's a job out there, the federal government is probably doing it as well. So you see able seaman and that type of thing, accounting, tech, budgeting and finance. But for our purposes today, let's look at location. And I'm going to put in Pasadena, Maryland. That's where I live. And I can't spell, sorry, I'm on a laptop. And we're going to pull up jobs through that mechanism. So we've told it what we want to look for, where we want to look. So we're going to tell you how I qualify, or what I am and what I'm able to look at. So you want to go down to the section that says who may apply. And as Liz pointed out earlier, you are now eligible for non-comp appointments, so we already know that, and you want to pull up that section, so make sure you read that. And as long as you're eligible for non-comp for your 1 year, or if you're eligible for the extension up to 3, you want to be sure that you answer yes all the time, every time, and click search jobs. So a whole bunch of jobs are going to come up, anything in this Pasadena, Maryland 20-mile radius. And on this screen, you can also narrow down your search by either job category, even further, salary again, pay grade, multiple different ways. So I'm going to just pull it up for, sorry, I left it open, 200 miles. But we're going to look at one specific announcement. So I already went in and pulled one that looked good that you guys can all still apply to. It closes tomorrow. So give me a second to pull that up for you. And as you see, it's a secretary, office automation, and some agencies post 2 jobs for the same thing. They post it either for only merit promotion, which is what non-comp eligible would be eligible for. So now you can be considered 2 ways, U.S. citizens and non-comp eligible. So we're going to look at the one that allows you to have non-comp eligibility. And what I'm pointing out here are about 5 key things on an announcement that you need to pay very close attention to. I recommend reading full announcements all the time, every time, because every job is going to be so different and have so many different requirements. You may have two jobs that are identical but have different requirements, and you would qualify for one and not the other. So I want you to always look at least for these 5 things if you don't read the full announcement. So first, let's look at how the non-comp eligibility applies for this job. So first, we're going to go look at who may apply. And of course, it says here, status candidates, merit promotion, VEOA eligible. But then you want to go further and look at who may be considered, because that'll change for every job depending on the agency. For this one, it's all, government-wide, career conditional employees, a lot of acronyms, VRA, VEOA, PLC. But specifically for us here, it says Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, VISTA Hiring Authority. So you guys are good. They want people like you, and it's a job that's open that you could apply to today. But in addition to that, you also want to look at qualifications required. As we pass by duties, please pay attention to that too. You want to know what you're going to be doing. So qualifications required. This job is telling you it has a variety of things that need to be in your resume. So it's telling us examples of experience would include performing secretarial duties in a highly professional atmosphere. They want somebody who has a wide array of software and specific tasks assigned, experience with preparation of documents for signatures, and the ability to edit that. So you want to make sure you reflect all of that in your resume, and I know you will, because it tells you right here your resume must show this experience or you're going to be disqualified. The next thing you want to look at is how you'll be evaluated. That's important because you want to know how they're going to mark you out if you don't reflect what they need. So in this job, it tells you right there, the rater will not make assumptions, guess, or use personal knowledge about your experience. So you want to make sure that you reflect everything that they asked in your resume. It doesn't have to be verbatim, but it does have to be there and supportable. And I want you to make a note of this. Your resume must support the responses to the occupational questionnaire. So hopefully a lot of you have already been out there and applying to positions. There's always a questionnaire with jobs. Answer the questions, but a lot of times people fail to reflect the questions in their resumes. And I will say that's one thing about federal resumes and why they're longer than 1 page or 2 page. It's because there's so many things that you have to reflect. You need to be able to cover it all. So making sure you do that, because I disqualify a lot of people based on that too. After that, you want to look at other information. And this is going to indicate the special hiring authority information and what they would like you to submit to support that. And so for this one, it's Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, VISTA Hiring Authority. Please indicate the type of special appointing authority you are seeking, so you need to put that on your resume somewhere, and submit the document to support that eligibility. Without that information, you will not be considered. And then finally, required documents. And I pulled this one specifically because I know this is a big problem, I know, is this one tells you specifically what they want on your resume, so you might have to change your resume if it doesn't reflect that. This one says they want personal information, education, and work experience. And it wants you to include the months, years, and hours per week you work to receive credit for your work experience. Otherwise, they're not going to qualify you, and they're going to automatically disqualify you. And they also state in here specifically they want the exact hours per week and not listed as varies, which is something people do a lot, and you will be disqualified. So those are just a few things that you want to look at. I will say those are the 5 most important things on an announcement, but again, please read the full announcement because sometimes they throw just random things in there for you. I'm going to stop sharing this now and go to the slide deck. Just give it a second to catch up. Okay, so I just wanted to give you a few tips when you're searching on USA Jobs. Just a couple of helpful hints. Search for key terms like AmeriCorps VISTA to help identify positions for people who are help identify positions that are hiring former VISTAs. You also want to look, if you know an agency that you want to work for, search that out. That's one of the searching criteria. You can go in there and say, I saw somebody type in there they wanted to work for FBI or they wanted to work for National Park Services. Specifically go to that agency's page and it'll list all the jobs for that area. Also, go on to the USA Jobs Resource Center because you can search by college major. So if you were a political science major, jobs regarding that will come up. I'm sure management and program analyst, I think, is a catch-all for a lot of jobs. I'm a poli-sci major, that's why I use that. When I was looking for jobs, that's what I did. And some jobs I'd never even heard of, I just identified itself. So how did I become a human resource specialist or a human capital specialist? Just one of the jobs that came up for political science was human capital specialist, and I fell into that. Next slide. So first, when you're searching for jobs, it's never too soon to start researching and networking to find out what people are looking for. You want to make sure that your experience can translate. So if you're looking at a job and you're saying, oh, I want to be an accountant, you want to know what kind of experience they're going to be looking for as what's the new trend in accounting. So do I need to know, I don't know, addition and math? I'm sorry, I'm not an accountant. I don't know what else they do. But you want to make sure you have that in your resume, and there's plenty of time for you to gain that experience. There's different ways to gain that. You guys are volunteers. You can volunteer to gain that type of experience. Nothing would bar you from gaining it at that time. So if you're looking 6 and 8 months out, there's plenty of time to gain that experience to get that. Apply early. Be mindful of each announcement that everything is going to be different. I can't stress that enough. Some announcements are going to close 30 days before. Your qualifications need to be met 30 days after the announcement. Some have to be at the closing date of announcement. Some will say 45 days from the announcement. So make sure you're reading it and finding out if you're even going to be qualified. So if it's at the closing date of the announcement and you haven't met your criteria, you're probably not going to be referred on that one. But another job will say you have to meet it 30 days after, and if you meet it in 15 days, you're fine. So you want to make sure you're reading the announcements to get that information correct, and then you're not wasting your time. And also note on your resume your non-comp eligibility, because like you saw on that last job, it's one of the requirements for that job to put it on your, not only on your cover letter, not only on attaching the document, but they also want it reflected on your resume. Okay, so starting your federal resume, there's a couple of hints that and tips that I think will help you. You want to be clear and concise with your experience. You want to be able to show that your experience clearly reflects the job you're applying to. So a couple of questions you may want to ask yourself is, when you look at your resume and when someone else looks at your resume, can they see that experience in there? Do the critical elements of that job stand out in your resume? And do you have to search for it in your resume? Is it clear? Is it up front? If it's experience that is hidden, it's probably not going to be seen because nobody's searching for it. Don't forget complete dates. I can't stress that enough, as you saw in that last announcement. If you use just the year, you're not going to get credit for, even if it was for the 6 months, you're not going to get the credit. So if you put on your resume 2014, you're going to probably likely get 1 month experience credit, or you're not going to get any credit at all because you didn't identify how long that experience was. So you want to make sure you're identifying from what date to what date that you qualify for that. Number of hours worked, as we saw in that last announcement again. You want to be able to get full credit. A lot of jobs prorate. Well, actually for the federal government, we have to prorate. So if you were working a part-time job and you were only working 20 hours a week, that's basically half experience that you would receive for full-time. So you want to be clear on your hours. And then highlight your volunteer experience, whether you add it to the main resume, as you can see here, or if you separate it out and make it just volunteer experience, but you want it to shine. You guys are working on great projects and doing dynamic work, so you want to make sure people know what you're doing and how you're doing it. Next slide. So we're going to take a look at some qualifications. Like I said, like no two jobs are ever going to be alike. You're going to have two accountants, and they're going to be very, very different. When you apply for a position, pay extra special attention to the qualifications required in the specialized experience field. It's so important. That's how you're rated in and how you're rated out. To be successful, your resume must demonstrate how you specifically qualify and how you meet those qualifications. You need to make the connection between your job qualifications and your specific experience. So let's take a look at a couple. So here we have a criminal investigator job. This is a real life job that I did. Just a quick excerpt. We were looking for somebody who had experience planning and conducting investigations related to alleged or suspected violations of criminal law, gathering and analyzing financial data. Where a lot of people fell short is they didn't have financial data, but let's look at a good resume that met those requirements. This person really wrote out what they did, and you were able to see the level of experience that they had. So you can see they were planning and conducting complex criminal and administrative misconduct investigations. They were working on financial procurement and contract fraud. They were ensuring investigations are conducted in compliance with statutory and legal requirements. They were preparing and critiquing comprehensive, detailed written reports of investigations. So their resume was very thorough. It really spoke to what level we were looking for that job. Next slide. On the other hand, this is also a live job. We had a public affairs specialist where we were looking for somebody who had experience conducting a public affairs program, and including written and oral communications, doing public education and outreach, basic photography skills, and management of public meetings. This person attached their resume. This is a real live resume. They had their years, 2005 and 2004. Where they, looking at this resume, you can see the applicant assumes that we know what they did, because I assume that's what they thought, because they have a position that's in Office of Special Programs as a director, and then they had a public relations executive. They just assumed that the title and assume that we know that that's what they did. But they have limited details. They assume the qualifications connect, and they don't address the qualifications specifically. There's no photography. You can't tell anything about their oral or written communication. My question for this resume would be, did they do press releases? Did they conduct interviews? It looks like they coordinated them, but they didn't tell us if they had any oral communications for this position. So, and the most important thing is they used 2005 and 2004, so this person only received 2 months credit. And for all I know, they could have been working the full year. Next slide. So when applying for positions, I just want to give a few tips. Don't assume, and you're going to hear this a lot, don't assume that the hiring manager knows what non-comp eligibility is. You want to highlight that in your cover letters, explain it briefly, and be prepared when asked to explain how the skills are transferable. You want to advocate for yourself. You want to make calls to the recruitment office or the names on the vacancy announcements and ask if they have a recruitment office or if there's a recruiter in that agency that handles specifically non-comp eligibles. Network, you've heard that before, and I think Liz and Calvin are going to talk about that again shortly. And finally, be mindful of closing dates. Don't wait till the last minute, the last second, where you make it into the job but your documents don't upload, because then you'll be disqualified. Don't give anyone any reason to disqualify you. Apply early, update your resume if you have to. Normally jobs are open 2 weeks, sometimes shorter, but always, always, always try to apply as early as possible, because you don't want to be cut off. You don't want to be disqualified for something that could have been helped. But now Cindy is going to talk to you and share her experience going through the federal hiring process. Cindy?
Thanks, Tawana. My federal job search began for the first time in 2010. I had just finished a year of service with the Washington Reading Corps in Bremerton, Washington. So personally, I focused my job search by location rather than by agency, and there were a couple reasons for this. At the time, I wasn't sure what kind of work I wanted to do, and I was really up for moving most places in the country, with some notable exceptions. So I narrowed my results from this first time around job search by location and then what I seemed to be qualified for. I did include my NCE status letter from the AmeriCorps portal every time I applied for a position. So the successes from this job search, I did have maybe 5 interviews, but the downside, I wasn't offered a position. The next time I started up the federal job search, it was much more in earnest, and it was after my VISTA Leader service was over. I did actually begin the search before my service was over, so the advice to start early is really true. And this time around, I mostly focused on positions with CNCS. I had a bit better idea of what I wanted to do, and it was only then that I emphasized my NCE status directly in my resume, like you see in the screenshot. And it was really only because I hadn't thought of it until then, no other reason. So there are several different ways you could emphasize NCE, but I chose to list the dates of the VISTA service that gave me the NCE and when that status was expiring. And this time I had success. So I was hired in summer of 2015 and started work in late August last year as an assistant program officer with AmeriCorps State and National. So a couple of takeaways for me going through the search process: the more you can highlight your NCE status up front, the better. And then just consider what ways you want to reference the NCE status in your resume. So you may want to be more explicit about it than I was. Just be creative and just make sure the information is there.
All right, thank you so much. So now we're going to ask a chat question. So in the chat box to the right-hand side, our question is, what types of skills do you think VISTA alums bring to employers? As you guys go through your year, you're gaining all sorts of skills. You're able to, multitask. You're grant writers. You are, volunteer mobilizers. You're doing all kinds of wonderful things. And we want to kind of hear. I see flexibility, community organizers, facilitation trainings. Let's see, the ability to manage stress, that is a big one. That's impressive. Please give me some tips and tricks on that one. We got resource development, taking the lead. Genuine caring. Oh, that's so nice. I like that.
That is
that's
nice.
Fuzzy. I like that one. So someone listed a lot of things. Let's see, commitment, data analysis, managing up. Ooh, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
That's real good. That's like some buzzwords right there. I like that. Ability to list things. That's great. Always keep a list. Love me a list. Man, you guys, there's so many skills. So as you can see, just by looking at the chat, I mean, you're doing all these great things. I'm telling you, maybe it's a good idea, at the end of this, to copy and paste this whole chat so you have, all these comments and you have all these things that other people are saying as sort of a way to, give you ideas of things that you can put on your own resume. So we're going to go back to Liz, and she is going to talk a little bit more, about translating some of this maybe to your resume and the top 5 skills, that alums provide to their employers. So Liz, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Calvin. Yes, you all are doing an amazing job of giving us some great answers in the chat, as well as some questions. So just so you know, we're trying to get to all of your questions in the Q&A, and please do make sure you are putting the questions in the Q&A. And Tawana, we sent you some that are specific to you through your chat, so just take a look at that, and we'll address them when we get to the Q&A part of the webinar. All right, so this graphic that you see there was put together by AmeriCorps alums, and it's a great handout highlighting the top 5 skills that AmeriCorps alumni bring to the workforce, and you all mentioned several of these. So these really are all translatable skills to employment and to federal employment. So what you learn through serving for 1 year with AmeriCorps Vista is invaluable. You really are given, and I hear this over and over again, and I experienced it myself, more responsibility than you probably would have received if you just had an entry-level type of job. So you are given a range of responsibility and just a variety of tasks that are really partly what makes Vista experience so unique. So do not underestimate what you have gained through your service experience. And as Tawada mentioned before, it's important to document how your experience meets the specific qualifications for the job. So Cindy is now going to give us some ideas for how to highlight your service experience, specifically using tasks from your VAD, your VISTA assignment description, in your resume. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to Cindy.
Thanks, Liz. Hi again, everyone. So I served as a VISTA leader for 3 years in Fargo, North Dakota. Which, yes, was an experience. I'll just leave it at that. And I worked with VADs a lot during that time. So I served with an intermediary VISTA sponsor, and that means I worked with a lot of different VISTAs and their supervisors at all kinds of organizations across the state. So I wrote, edited, and modified VADs during my service, and that was really probably one of my favorite parts of being a VISTA leader. I'm an English Lit major, so I love to write and edit things, so I'm a bit of a nerd in that way. So how can you pull the most and the best information out of your VAD? As I'm sure you all know, employers like to see quantitative information when they review resumes. So when you look at your VAD, does it contain numbers pertaining to money raised, number of volunteers recruited, or number of youth served in a program you created? Or maybe you identified a need and created new systems or database. Or are there any new processes you implemented or will implement depending on what part of your service you're in? Is your VAD organized by categories of service activities like volunteer management, data collection, or resource development? Could this help format your resume? Also, it's always a good idea to include bullet points around any of these skills you developed or enhanced. And certainly, I'm not an expert. I'm just speaking from my own experience, so please highlight skills you've developed throughout your service, but think about leadership, management, critical thinking, or flexibility. And then think about what's missing, what's not there. So what isn't on your VAD that you've accomplished and that you could include in your resume? And then just a few other pieces of advice. You might think about asking this question of your supervisor or someone in HR at your organization. You might ask them, what would the qualifications and technical competencies be if your VISTA position were a staff role? Do they share anything with you that you can use in your resume? And I started to do this probably way late in my VISTA service. I wish I had thought of it earlier. But think about making notes on your VAD as you serve throughout the year. So as you work on projects, jot down things like measurable outcomes, skills you developed or strengthened. What was the feedback given on your work? Personally, I have a tendency to forget those things very quickly, especially after serving multiple years. So keeping track of them as you go could be helpful.
Sorry, we were on mute there. Thank you, Cindy. All right, so hopefully that was helpful to you all, and you can start looking at your VADs in a new way. So we wanted to post up here an actual position that is currently up on the Vista Campus job board. The deadline for this position is March 14th, which is Monday. So if those of you are done with your service and this is of interest to you, go ahead and fill out, you let them follow the instructions on the Vista Campus job board for submitting your resume. But what we wanted to do here was to take a look at what they are interested in terms of a candidate and think about what VISTA-related experiences do you have that might translate to the qualifications for this position. So the job description was a bit long to put on here and to read, but let's just take a moment to say, okay, so if they are looking for candidates that have excellent interpersonal communications, presentation, and customer service skills, they want somebody with experience in managing and prioritizing multiple and varied assignments, they want you to be able to work both independently and as a member of a team, and they want you to have strong quantitative and qualitative analytical and organizational skills. So share in the chat room, what are some things that you all might have been doing that you could put on your resume that would make you a stronger candidate if you were applying for this position? So we'll give you a minute to answer that in the chat room and see what we're getting here. There we go.
Creating and managing a volunteer database of 200 volunteers. Hey, that's great.
Nice, and that's great to put in those numbers. That's what pops on a resume. Make things as quantifiable as you can. That's super.
Recruiting, interviewing, hiring, managing and overseeing interns and volunteers. That's a lot of qualifiers. But yeah, definitely. I mean, that's your interpersonal skills. You know, that is managing multiple and varied assignments / people, working independently, creating an employment database. Oh my God.
Yeah, awarded a grant for $100,000.
Wow,
that's huge.
Way to go, Rudy. Way to go.
Managing a database of 13,000 donors, tracked and analyzed donation history for the organization for a period of 8 years. That's huge. So you guys are getting it. Really take a look at what you've been doing, and if you can put numbers to it, that is a really important part that will be attractive to whoever is reviewing your resume. So that's great. That is wonderful. I think you guys get it. Okay, we're going to move along. We have just a few more minutes before we start the Q&A and addressing the questions that you all have been sending to us. So we're going to take a quick look at some additional employment resources. So first up, I did mention the Vista Campus Job Board. Just wanted you all to have a visual and know where to find it. So if you go to the campus, which I'm sure you do on a regular basis, you go to Life as a Vista and scroll down to Job Board. And this is what it looks like. It's very simple, but you can filter by location, you can filter by interest area, and you can also filter by positions that are looking for NCE. And when I did the screenshot, there were 90 positions or 34 positions that were looking for NCE. So this is a place where we tell federal employers to post their positions because they are just as hungry to get good qualified candidates as you are to get a job. You'll also see a lot of member and leader positions posted on the campus job board as well. So just make it a habit of checking that campus job board. The next thing I wanted to mention was the Employers of National Service Initiative. You may have heard this term. It was launched by President Obama in July of 2014 as a talent pipeline, trying to connect AmeriCorps and Peace Corps alumni with leading employers from the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. And I love this quote from him. I'm just going to read it because I think he says it best. If you're an employer who wants to hire talented, dedicated, patriotic, skilled, tireless, energetic workers, look to AmeriCorps, look to the Peace Corps. Citizens who perform national service are special. You want them on your team. So I think it's kind of cool that President Obama recognizes what you all are doing, and he sees the value in it. This is trickling down to all federal agencies, and it's pretty exciting. There's quite a lot of momentum behind it now, and as you can see from the next slide, there are over 350 employers that have signed on, and there's actually now 17 federal agencies. So you can see from the logos what some of the types of organizations are that are participating. So you can go to nationalservice.gov and go to the Employers of National Service section and take a look at the jobs opening. There's links to all these companies up there. And don't let your research stop there, because I bet many of you you're on LinkedIn, so you can connect with a lot of these potential employers and identify yourself as a VISTA member who is looking for a position, or you're an alum who's looking for a job now. So check your online and your personal connections, your in-person connections, and see if anyone is currently employed by any of these organizations, and talk to that person. Find out what it's like to work there and ask if they can help you in scheduling an informational interview. There's also a toolkit available on that site for alumni to help you take advantage of the Employers of National Service initiative.
Yeah, it's really great. I saw someone posted in the chat, the entire city of New York, all of New York City is now an Employer of National Service. If you want to work for the city of New York, I mean, that's an Employer of National Service.
Absolutely.
Near the Grand Canyon, there's an entire, county. I forget what the county name is, but it's at the Grand Canyon. They have a page dedicated to Employers of National Service. You can go straight to a website that is just for National Service volunteers and apply directly to these positions, and maybe even get some priority in hiring. It's really great. It's a really wonderful program.
It is. So you can see we really are trying on this end to make AmeriCorps more of a household name, so that when employers see AmeriCorps Vista on your resume, it's going to pop out and they understand what it means to have that experience. And you don't have to do all of the explaining yourself. So just to take a quick look at our employment resources summary, we've already talked about the job board. If you go to nationalservice.gov, our homepage, you will see those mostly social media icons to the right on this slide. And the last one is the little envelope, and that represents our mechanism of sending emails through GovDelivery. And you can actually sign up for our non-competitive eligibility positions mailing list. So I encourage you to do that, because we will send out announcements as we get them occasionally. And another unique opportunity that is currently available to AmeriCorps alums is the Eli Segal Fellowship. Eli Segal was the first CEO of the Corporation for National and Community Service, which of course is the federal agency that houses AmeriCorps. And the fellowship accepts highly qualified candidates for a 13-month immersion experience here at CNCS, and it really allows alums to gain firsthand experience in how a federal agency works to implement policy and leverage national service in order to tackle some of the pressing issues facing our nation. I believe the currently serving Eli Segal Fellow will be done in August. I think it's the August-September timeframe. So take a look if that's of interest to you. And then I did mention AmeriCorps alums. Go look them up online. They are also a great career resource. Their website has a lot of great information for alums. They also have a job board. They do career fairs, and they also have chapters in locations across the country, so you can have a network of folks in person. And then I already mentioned the Employers of National Service. So I just want to underscore that as a VISTA alum, you will have access to all of these resources now and throughout your life. We are here for you. So once a VISTA member, always a VISTA member. So keep the Campus Job Board AmeriCorps alum site bookmarked in your job search folder, as well as usajobs.gov. So we just wanted to highlight a couple of upcoming career fairs. In person, if you happen to be in the Portland area, I'm going to be there in 2 weeks. There's a career fair happening that is still open, and the registration for that, I think, is going to be in the chat room. So join us there if that's where you happen to be. There's also going to be one in Chicago on June 21st, and that is actually going to be focused on Employers of National Service. So a lot of the employers that we just mentioned, and you saw those logos, hopefully will be there. So if you happen to be in the Midwest area, join us for that. And then you can be located anywhere to participate in the AmeriCorps Alums Virtual Career Fair. They've got two, one coming up in early April and another in October. So please utilize those resources as well. So finally, just to summarize your next steps, we recommend reviewing your VAD for impressive and quantifiable data, which you have already shared, and you have, so that's fabulous.
$100,000 grant.
That's right. Woo, woo. Second, establish your federal resume profile on USA Jobs. Third, upload your resume in addition to your profile. Fourth, compose a cover letter identifying your AmeriCorps Vista status, your NCE, your available start date, and your outstanding skills and attributes. And please, please, please double check for typos. I will tell you, if I see a typo on a resume, it goes in the no pile immediately. So it's just really important to have other people eyeball it. It's telling of your attention to detail, and that's an important quality that employers look for. So just have another set of eyes or two take a look at your materials. And then finally, ask a professional, well, I just said that, ask a professional contact to review your resume. And not just for typos, but also, would they hire you? Is what you've put down on paper really a reflection of your skills and experience, and is it as good as you are? Because it's really, your resume is just the foot in the door, and once you get that, you can wow them in the interview process. Okay, so I will pause there and turn it back over to Calvin.
All right, thank you, Liz. So we had a lot of questions come in, and we apologize that we weren't able to answer them all through the Q&A, but we're definitely going to try to address some right now while we have all of our people on the phone. Before we get started, a quick note: there is a poll that just popped up, and that's to kind of give us a review, sort of feedback of the session, what you liked, what you didn't like, and what we could do better, maybe suggestions for future webinars. So if you would, before exiting, just kind of take a look at that and fill that out for us. It's super helpful when we're trying to plan these. We're trying to plan all of these webinars. Again, if you want to answer, or if you would like to ask a question verbally, you can call in and press *1. Unmute your phone, press *1, and it'll queue you up, and we will be able to talk to you live and answer some questions. Before I go to the phone, we'll give you guys a second to get in there. We did have a question for Tawana. Tawana, if you're there. One of the questions, or a lot of them, kind of revolved around extensions and how those sort of work. We mentioned it, but if you could give us a little bit more detail about maybe how do you go about getting an extension, when might that start?
Okay, so how the extensions work, okay, you all know there's going to be, I don't know, say you get 500 applications. You're going to review them. So typically what we do here at CNCS is we basically err on the side of the applicant. So if we see somebody had school, we'll give them the extension. However, if it's not noted on your resume, which sometimes people don't always do, or they'll put it in their cover letter, it can't qualify in your cover letter. We only review your resume. The cover letter is really for the manager, so we do give it to you if we know that it's there. But that said, sometimes people have things on there that may qualify that I don't know. So if it's a nonprofit that would qualify, I don't know every nonprofit, and I don't know everything that is a nonprofit. So you might, if it's something that's specific for you, I would call the person on the announcement. And sometimes those agencies have like help desks. The help desk has somebody assigned to each announcement. So just make sure you call and find out so that you can inquire, or they'll give you a way to get in contact with people, because you do need to let them know, because sometimes we just don't know. If it's not very clear, we're not going to give it to you. Unless it's clear and it's able to be seen, we won't give it.
Wonderful. All right, so let's say we had a VISTA, that does a year of service, and then they go to grad school for a couple of years. Would their non-competitive eligibility start after their VISTA service or after their school term, if you were looking at that?
So it reads that it's after the service. So if they go to school for like a year, and it was, let's say it was 2015, and they went to school for a year and they came out in, I don't know, 2016 sometime or 2017, it's still back from the 2015 date, 3 years from that date.
All right, thank you. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to ask the operator. Operator, do we have any questions on the line?
Yes, sir. Our first question today comes from Andrea.
All right, hello, Andrea. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Yeah, what's your question?
So for example, if I'm on USA Jobs and I find some that are current and application is due, let's say, in a few weeks, if I am finished with my term in, let's say, August, is it still okay to apply to a job that I wouldn't be able to actually fill in about 6 months? Or would it be best to just start looking, you know, a little sooner before my end date?
Very good question. Oh, is that for me?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, please do. Take it away. You are our expert here.
That's why I say it's really important to read the vacancy announcement, because every agency has a different policy on when the requirements need to be met. So that's why I say some are actually closing date of the announcement, so then it would be kind of a waste of time because they're not going to qualify you because it had to be met at the closing date of the announcement. But there are tons of agencies out there or tons of positions that will say 90 days or 30 days to meet the requirement. So in that case, it may be in your advantage to apply. So you just want to really, really be sure when you're applying to the job that you're reading the full announcement, because it'll tell you right there.
Okay, and it will just be in that announcement somewhere?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Andrea.
Thank you. Our next question comes from
Hannah Johnson.
Your line is open, ma'am.
Hello, Hannah Johnson. I've seen you in that chat and in that Q&A. How are you?
Hello. So I'm wondering about the letter that you can get, the VISTA Verification of Service letter. Is that like a PDF that is sent to you, or is that a physical copy that you're mailed? How does that work?
Sure, I'll take that one. This is Liz. So you can get from the portal, from my.americorps.gov, from your account, you can get both a currently serving letter, and once you finish, you can get a letter of non-compete. And you can just download that or you can print it out, you can have it as a PDF, however you want. You can also get the letter that was in the screenshot by contacting the VMSU directly, and they will send you a PDF that you can use accordingly. I don't want to bore people with the back end of this, but basically we're in the process of putting the letter that you saw on the screen into the portal. But in terms of letters that are fine for verification of service for non-compete, either the letter that you get off the portal right now or the letter that you get directly from the VMSU is perfectly fine for that. If you're trying to get a letter to get your service credited towards federal retirement, which hopefully you all know is also a benefit. So your VISTA service, if you get, like for example, I've been at CNCS for 7 years, but I've actually technically, in terms of my leave accumulation and my retirement purposes, been with the government for 8 years because my VISTA term counts. In order for that process to take place, and again, I don't mean to complicate things, but you need the letter from the VMSU because we just haven't been able to put that letter that serves all purposes up on the portal yet, but we're in the process of it. But for the point of non-compete, either letter works.
So for the retirement thing, the VISTA Verification of Service letter would also count towards the retirement.
Yeah, but you really, that's why I'm saying that in order for it to do everything, just go through the VMSU right now.
Yeah, okay, cool, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Hannah. Before we get back to the phone, I would like to ask another question that's come up in the Q&A that I think is pretty important. Do lawful permanent residents or holders of a green card, are they also eligible for non-competitive eligibility?
Well, on my end, you have to be a U.S. citizen.
Right.
For most of our jobs.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh.
All right. Well, I think that answers that. Thank you. All right. Did we have any more questions on the phone?
Yes, sir. Our next question comes from Demetra Dorsey.
Demetra, hello. How are you?
Hi, how are you? I'm doing
great. Thank you.
Great. My question is in regards to the virtual job fair that I saw was going to be on the April 8th as well as October the 27th from 1 to 4. And I was curious or wondering, is there a registration form that needs to be filled out prior to those dates? And how does that process exactly work once those dates have came?
Sure. So because those are administered by AmeriCorps alums, which is a separate organization, you would need to go through them, and it's my understanding you have to register to participate. So maybe, Jessica, maybe we can do a little quick Google search under AmeriCorps alums.org and come up with the link to to register for the upcoming career fair.
Yeah, so look for that in the chat.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Any other questions on the phone?
Yes, sir. Our next question comes from Matthew Papalardo.
All right, Matthew, take it away.
Hi. So I'm hoping to go to law school after my service in the AmeriCorps. But because of the start dates of most law schools, I would have to wait a couple of months. So let's say I waited 4 months and then went to a 3-year accredited university. Would my NCE restart when I exited law school, or would those 4 months already count towards it passing?
Tawana, you want to take that?
Well, we count it from the end of the date you got out of service. So it would be that 1 year, and then if you go to school, it doesn't suspend it or anything. It's just still counting for 3 years. So whatever 3 years is from that date.
So before you started service, if you close your service and then you have 4 months before you go to school, those 4 months are sort of ticking down on your time, if
Correct.
you will.
And then after you graduate, you have the remaining
9 months. Or
9 months. Okay, so it doesn't reset.
No.
Okay.
Did you say no, Tawana?
Yeah, it doesn't reset it. It's just counting down from that date. So if you get out early or you get out late and you miss the timeline, I mean, I guess I would be applying. I mean, and you're going to law school, so it depends on what kind of job you're looking for. But if you're looking for a bar exam, I don't know that you'd be done the bar exam. So there's so many things that would come into play for you if you were trying to get a general attorney position. So that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
And I will offer, because there are a lot of questions, you can also contact us at vistaoutreach@cns.gov. If you have a specific situation and you need help figuring out an answer, just go ahead and contact us directly at vistaoutreach@cns.gov, and we will get to you as soon as we can. But in the meantime, we can continue with our Q&A here.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions on the phone?
At this time, I'm showing no questions. However, as a reminder, if you're wishing to ask a question, please press star followed by 1 and record your name at the prompt.
All right, thank you so much. Tawana, I have a question for you. I have another question for you. I saw a lot of questions in regards to, do I list my VISTA service as a volunteer position or do I list it as a job? Am I employed? Can you maybe tell us a little bit about kind of listing it as a volunteer position or as a job, or if it would be situational, or sort of what are the circumstances around that?
Well, I think it's more preference, but when indicating it, so there's 2 ways to build jobs in USA Jobs. One is uploading off of whatever document, like Word, your resume into USA Jobs. And the other is to build it in the system. So if you're building it in the system, you're automatically going to be putting $0, so it's going to already look like it's a volunteer service. I mean, I would just not be shady, but unclear. I would want it to be highlighted as volunteer service, not necessarily for the HR person, but maybe for the manager, because it is two separate reviews. Because I'm looking at it from a different set of eyes than a manager would look at it. So if you integrate it in your resume chronologically, that's fine too. But, you know, just say it's volunteer service and you were doing ... You work so many hours per week, blah, 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 whatever it is. However you decide to do your resume if you do use USA Jobs, just make sure it's clear. It doesn't matter if you integrate it as part of work experience, because it is work experience. It would just be unpaid work experience versus putting it at the bottom as volunteer experience. That's more preference.
Great. No, that's a really wonderful answer. That's definitely better than anything I could have come up. Putting an unpaid work experience, if you want to, you know, kind of flip it that way, or if you can say that as volunteer experience. And I think it'd be maybe situational depending on the type of position that you're applying for. You know, if they're looking more for, if you want to count it as a year of work experience, or you want to count it as a year of volunteer experience.
Right. Because it's still, for us, it's going to just be experience. It doesn't matter.
Oh, right. Okay. Fair. No, that's great. Thank you.
Right, because just to piggyback on that, on a resume, you often have education, experience, and then maybe even a volunteer category later on, but you can certainly put it in under experience.
Someone said, follow up, I'm getting $12,000 for a VISTA, and I'm not supposed to list it in the federal resume? Yeah, list it. Like, we want you to list your service on your resume. You know, and say all the things that you did, all the wonderful, I mean, you are doing a job as a volunteer, basically. I mean, we definitely want you to list that.
And it's just a technicality. You know, VISTAs are technically not employees, and they're not employees of the federal government. So that's why there may be a little bit of a sticking point there. But by all means, it still counts as experience on your resume.
Oh. I saw a question in there about the hours for VISTAs. The VISTA program does not keep track of your hours for completion. We keep track of days. As a VISTA member, you're going to complete 365 days of service for your 1 year of service. So, you know, if a resume is asking for your hours, I would put the amount of hours that you're working each week. If you're working 40 to 45 hours, I mean, go ahead and list it as that, and not as 1,700 hours, because we don't have an hours requirement, and we're not keeping track of that. So I figure that's an easy one to answer. Maybe another easy one, and this may be for Tawana. Does merit promotion equal non-competitive eligibility? Are those the same thing, or are they different terms, completely different terms?
They're different. Non-comp falls under merit promotion.
Okay.
It's a branch off of, yeah. I guess it's a little complicated to explain, but merit promotion is how agencies can set up their own rules and regulations, and under that, non-comp would be one of them.
All right. Yeah, go for it.
All right, so there's a couple of other questions in the Q&A that I'm going to try to address that have to do with the fun topic of extension. So they're asking, what's the process for maintaining/extending NCE status? Is there a formal way to extend when they are ready for the job search? So it's not as though there is some database where this information is located. It really is just a matter of, if you're a VISTA leader, telling your VISTAs or putting it into your resume on your cover letter, as we've been discussing. So it's really communication between you and the hiring manager. It's not as though that's really just the way that it's communicated. I hope that makes sense. And another one is can you submit for an extension earlier when you become a full-time student? There's no submitting for an extension. That's not part of this process. So it really is ultimately the decision is up to the hiring manager that you are working with. Is there anything else that you would add to that, Tawana?
No, I mean, that's pretty true. I mean, just making sure that you advocate for yourself, because people will miss stuff like that. I mean, we're looking at hundreds and thousands of applications a week. So eventually, sometimes we miss stuff. I've missed stuff before, and somebody called me and said, hey, and I'm like, oh, I totally didn't even see it. It's one person looking at every resume, and things run together after a while. Like, you don't even see names after a while. So, yeah, if you notice somebody disqualified you for a reason, call and ask, why'd you disqualify me? There's nothing barring you from doing that.
Exactly. Thanks, Tawana. I'm also seeing an easy question to answer in the chat. Besides USA Jobs, what are some other websites to apply for government jobs? USA Jobs really is the official site. When you're using your NCE, as we've mentioned, places like the VISTA Campus Job Board and the job board that's on AmeriCorps alum site, and there's also one on the Peace Corps site, those are either just asking for your resume or they're leading you back to USA Jobs.
Yeah.
So that really is the hub.
If you're looking at a specific agency, you can go to that agency's website and maybe find employment openings there, but it's more than likely going to lead you back to USA Jobs to have you apply through that system. All right. Did we get any more phone questions?
Sir, at this time I'm showing no questions.
All right, wonderful. Well, I want to thank everyone so much for all the really great questions. I hope that this is informational for everyone. Again, if you have questions that you think were unanswered, you can send them to vistaoutreach@cns.gov, and we'll be sure to find you an answer and get back with you. But before we go, I want to share information about an upcoming webinar. Coming up, we have a webinar on March 30th. For building sustainability into a volunteer program. So if you're interested in that webinar, please attend. The link will be on the Vista Campus website for you to register and sign up for that. So yeah, again, we want to thank you so much for attending, and we will see you on the other side. Continue to do really great work.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time and your energy and everything that you're doing to try and eliminate poverty in America. So thank you so much, and we really appreciate everything that you're doing, and good luck.